Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Talking Point, the show where we bring you guys at home into the studio and discuss the biggest talking points from the beautiful game. Now today I am joined by none other than Christopher Hamill. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good to hear, yeah, not too bad. Henry, how are you doing?
Yes, all the best to see you.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. And now we're not just us here in the studio, we've also got an Aston Villa fan called Ty. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you for asking.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Now, I want to say, I did want to start off the show by saying good evening, because we are going to be talking about Unai Emery and Aston Villa after they announced that he will become their new manager. Now, Aston Villa paid £5.25 million to get him from Villarreal. That was his release clause. Now, he's taking charge on November the 1st. His first game is Manchester United. Oof. They are currently 15th in the table. However, there's only 3 points between 16th and 9th in the table, so a lot to be played for. But Ty, we're going to go straight over to you, mate, for our first talking point. Why did Gerrard have to go? I want to touch on Stevie G.
I mean, there's a long list, but we won't go down that. But the long story short,
we've got time.
We weren't learning from our errors, and we were playing the same out of form players every week, and the system that we were playing just wasn't working. And then it just seemed we were flying different systems out there that, again, still didn't work. We were playing players who were lacking confidence, were out of form, and it just wasn't working anymore. So it was just time to go, really. Now,
you mentioned off camera beforehand that you were actually a big fan of Steven Gerrard when he first came in. Did you like it? Did you like his first season in charge of Aston Villa, and then things very quickly this season kind of dropped off? Or after the first couple of games, were you already maybe thinking, maybe this isn't going to quite work out?
I'll be honest, I bought into the dream straight away. I thought, fairy tale, here we go. He's going to be a Villa for a few years and then take over from Klopp in Liverpool in a few years' time and, sail off into the sunset. But
happy to be a stepping stone club. Shocking stuff.
The Premier League is, it's a punishing league. It really is. And, if you're going to do it in Scotland and come to the Premier League, it's not easy to do. So, I definitely bought into it, and we played some good football at the start. We had a bit of a bounce, but it's just been on and off misery for the last 12 months, which is just unfortunate, really. So, yeah, I fell for it, mate. I really did.
I mean, Chris, you actually at the beginning were never a big fan of Gerrard going over to Aston Villa. I've actually seen on Twitter some Villa fans.
Of course he isn't a fan.
Of course.
Henry, please don't accuse me of bias.
But I saw a lot of people on Twitter, actually Villa fans, saying that the best thing Gerrard did in his tenure at Aston Villa was making sure no Villa fans went to the World Cup, so they got a month off.
Right.
But yeah, obviously you were never a big fan of him originally. Has it gone how you kind of expected?
I just thought there were better candidates out there, people with a higher pedigree, people with more experience in Europe's top 5 leagues. Obviously, Dean Smith got the sack because of his inability to establish them as a top 10 club. I didn't think Gerrard was better equipped to do that than Dean Smith, especially after winning 1 trophy of the 9 available in Scotland. I think Unai Emery is probably the best appointment they could have made at this moment in time and has a substantially better pedigree than Gerrard. So I'm all for this one, Zach.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
Christian Perslow has won me back over.
I'm sure Ty is glad to hear it as well. That'll move us actually on to our next talking point then, Unai Emery. Unai Emery in general, there's lots to discuss here. Ty, first we come to you. Your original thoughts and feelings when you saw that he had been announced.
Over the moon. I'd said as soon as Gerrard had been sacked that this time we needed to get it right and we couldn't take a risk. It needed to be an elite level manager. When I say elite level, when you look at Unai Emery, you're looking at 3 Europa Leagues, a Champions League semi-final, 7 trophies in 2 seasons at PSG, Valencia 2 third-place finishes. That's the type of calibre of manager we need, is someone who's got that experience, because he's got the experience in the place that we really want to start moving towards. We've had too many seasons now that have been write-off after write-off due to circumstances. So now it's just that time to really push on and really push up the table, hopefully.
Interesting. Now, obviously, Henry, you're kind of our European expert at times. We like to think, anyway.
He likes to
think, yeah, for sure. What do you make of Emery's time at the Yellow Submarine? That was Villarreal, and obviously, I guess we have seen him previously at Arsenal, but I guess more recently, he's been doing a pretty good job there.
You know what? It's being made out as his point to prove coming back to the UK. He's got kind of brush away that period at Arsenal. By the way, at the start, Arsenal were very good under him, and he was given a horrible task of going under Arsene Wenger. A horrible task. And there was a point where they looked very positive. Obviously, it fell away. He doesn't have anything to prove, in my opinion, as we've just touched upon his record. I think the biggest ever win percentage in PSG history as a manager. I mean, some of the things that he's achieved with that Villarreal side is remarkable. They do have a slightly bigger budget than most people give them credit for, but to get to the semi-final of that Champions League, to beat teams in the fashion that he's done, outwit sort of Liverpool in the final of that Europa League, outwit Bayern Munich in the Champions League, outwit Real United as well. I mean, he's a very, very, very intelligent manager, and yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do. It's a slightly odd job, I think, in many sense, in terms of Gerrard looks a bit devoid of ideas attacking going forward. I think the problem was they were just lumping in crosses, which weren't really working to much effect towards the end of it. We've seen a lot about sort of Beale going to QPR and sort of transforming QPR. What a loss that was at Gerrard's side. Emery isn't going to light up Villa Park with his style.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying that Aston Villa are now going to be playing exciting football. Yeah. Don't know if that's going to be quite happening.
The fact they were linked with Amorim at Sporting, and I was thinking maybe this could be the time, because Sporting have dropped off a little bit this season, doing okay in the Champions League, but have dropped off. I was thinking maybe he could be tempted over. But they've gone for Emery. His Villarreal side, okay, they're very good defensively. Attacking, not so great. That's more of a lack of personnel than anything. I think Moreno's been injured for a lot of the season. They're very middling in La Liga for kind of shots, for chances creation. Danjuma's only really got going again in the last few games. So it's slightly interesting to see the direction that Suarez, etc., and the ownership want to take this club. What you will get is a very, very well-coached side. What you're going to get, which Gerrard was more like mentality, aspects.
Felt like a bit of a throwback in that regard, didn't he? Left the details to Beale.
Yes.
He was sort of like, I'm the guy that defines the culture.
Exactly.
When most of the top, elite level managers now will be detail orientated, like Emery is.
Exactly. And kind of what Chris was saying, at Rangers that was fine because he could get away with it against the weaker teams with a 60% performance. You can't do that in the Premier League, and I think Emery will elevate every performance by that Aston Villa side. But he's got a lot of games coming very thick and fast before the World Cup. And he is more of a guy that likes to coach and have sort of a tactical setup for matches. He's not going to have a chance to do that until maybe once the World Cup kicks in and he can sit back and really take stock of this Villa side. Because I doubt he saw this job coming, really, let's face it. He was Villarreal doing all right, back-to-back 7th place finishes, by the way. A lot of people are criticising that out there on football Twitter. I think that's totally nonsense. That is amazing what he's done.
Especially with the budget they've got as well.
To coincide with their runs in Europe as well. So yeah, you're going to get a very well-coached side. I think it's going to take a while to see that, though. But it was very sort of weird to see Aston Villa play so well in the one game after Gerrard.
When the shackles were off. I can see where some people are coming across with the 7th place thing to an extent, because obviously Real Sociedad, Real Betis are consistently finishing above them. And speaking to him coming off camera, he was saying the sort of the chase and pack in La Liga in recent years, not as impressive as maybe in the past. But that's the price you pay for going deep in European competition with a relatively small squad. I remember you highlighting how small the squad was. So I think the payoff there, the juice was obviously worth the squeeze, wasn't it? And to take them, on to win their first trophy in, 98 years or something, I might be misquoting that, but absolutely formidable. I just think he's so good with misfits, broken toys. When Nzonzi went off to Sevilla, it just became like one of the best, best is probably generous, but a highly functioning,
the French national
deep-lying playmaker, Ever Banega in attacking not just defensive players, Ever Banega in that attacking midfield role was his sort of linchpin, wasn't he, in that Sevilla side. I think he's going to do that job with a lot of these Villa players too, who have probably been a little bit, maybe since Beale went, I don't know, we might be overdoing that narrative somewhat, but have probably been a bit lost out there when things have got tough. And I think what these players are going to know, that their roles are going to be very clearly defined, I think, under Emery, and that's going to help them maybe get out of this rut, out of this struggling period.
Nice. I mean, Ty, something that I wanted to ask you, is it not a little bit worrying possibly that the Villa board were looking, and I know they're such good managers, so you're going to maybe try your luck, but going for Tuchel, going for Pochettino, going for Amorim as well, guys who are all quite different with their styles of play, does that not maybe worry you slightly that maybe there's not quite an idea with where Villa want to go exactly, and they're just looking to try and get the best man possible, or the only one possible?
I mean, I have absolutely no problem with them looking at people with different styles because, I mean, we need a manager who's going to come in and implement style and implement, instill the DNA into the team that they're playing every week. I mean, when you look at Emery, for example, he's never had less than a 46% win percentage at any job in his managerial career. We've only had 2 in our history, and the last one was in 1934. The only way, it can only get better. So just for us to even try our luck with that calibre of manager, I have absolutely no problem with the style. That's absolutely no problem to me whatsoever. I think we've got the people who we've approached have, I think Pochettino hits a 4-3-3 system, but then we've got the calibre of player to accommodate for that, and same with Emery with his 4-2-3-1. So I think that's what we're going to see from him.
Ty, we see Emery, maybe because he's been at underdog clubs throughout his managerial career, apart from PSG, of course. He's quite a reactive manager to what the opposition are doing. So I think maybe where he came under a lot of criticism at Arsenal for perhaps not having a very clearly defined or extremely progressive game plan. Do you think that kind of suits Aston Villa to maybe rein in expectations, maybe for him to communicate, we might not be a team that are able to, project ourselves onto the opposition, but we know where their weaknesses are and we're gonna chip away at them like that. He's a bit more reactive in that fashion, and I wonder if that suits Aston Villa at current, rather than sort of maybe Gerrard and Pursloh's delusions of grandeur of breaking into the top 8 straight away. Wayne, what do you make of that? Because he's not the most, like Henry said, the football's not going to be free flowing. It's not going to be. He's not going to be hell bent on scoring goals, but it might prove to be winning football, or at least you might be tough to break down.
Results.
I mean, as far as I'm aware, he got Arsenal to 70 points, which, if I'm correct, at that time they hadn't achieved since the 2005/6 season. And that's with players the likes of Mustafi and Iwobi in the team. So. I think we've got the good base of players, but I think we need to add a little bit more. I think we're going to do a bit of business. I think the World Cup coming is probably a bit of a blessing to us. We've only got a few fixtures left now before the World Cup, and in that time, that's when he's going to be getting everything done and getting everything prepped for the transfer window after the World Cup. So I think the World Cup has really come at a good time. If there's anything that he's got time to assess in those 5 games before the World Cup, and then anything we need to do after that, that's where we'll get some business done in the window in January.
I mean, you mentioned there, it moves us onto our final talking point. You said assess. What do you think Aston Villa's biggest issues are that need fixing right now? If I went to you, name me the 3 things that Aston Villa need to fix, or that Unai Emery needs to fix at Villa Park. What do you think they are?
I think he needs to know his best 11 first and foremost. I think that is absolutely, undeniably the biggest point. The 3 players who we essentially signed to replace Grealish, which was Bailey, Buendia and Ings, only started for the first time together on the weekend against Brentford. That's £80 million.
Didn't go too bad though.
First time they did. Yeah, no, exactly, and that's what I mean. We signed those players, then there's never been an instance where they all play together. Knowing his best 11 is going to be undeniably the number one thing. Okay. And the secondly for me, I don't know if I can touch upon a third point, but someone who's connected with the fans, I think, is massively important. I think Steven Gerrard was very out of touch, especially when you look at the level that Dean Smith had a connection with us. I think he really needs to get in touch with the fans, and I think that's a massively important part. And Villa Park is such a big and can be a patronising stadium for an opposition. So to have that 12th man every game at home is massively important, and it's massive. We really need everybody on board. So we really need him to get behind the fans as well as the players. We really do.
Yeah, Ty, I think that's a really good point. I saw Richarlison saying that Villa Park was the most intimidating atmosphere that he played at. He's played at in the Premier League outside of Merseyside and Goodison Park, I should say. And Emery is a positive figure. I think he's very positive in his press conferences. He's a very sort of humble man. We saw him reject the Newcastle deal because out of sort of loyalty and respect to his family and the fact they enjoyed living in Valencia, etc. So he is a guy that I think will breathe a bit of energy and fresh air into that club. And also exactly what you said about defining player systems. I think there was a graph where it showed that Buendia is really, they have their midfielders all bunched in certain areas of the pitch this season, sort of unable to break out and do what they sort of show their individual flair, and I think he will knuckle down that. And Buendia's barely played the position that he played for Norwich since he's gone to Aston Villa. Even Coutinho, I think that Emery, although Coutinho was brought in very much as a Gerrard signing, I think Emery is as good an appointment as you're going to get to kind of continue to give him confidence to go and show what he can really do. Because as we saw last season, Coutinho can be brilliant going forward. And yeah, figuring out how to get Watkins and Ings is going to be massive, because you've got two great goal scorers there who've struggled to play as a pair. But if he can figure that out, which I think he will, then yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do. Because if he did so well with Moreno and Danjuma up front, which is kind of a similar fit in many ways, imagine what he could do with Watkins and Ings.
Yeah. I was going to say, he's played 4-4-2 a lot, hasn't he? Which will be music to the ears of Villa forwards who have found themselves in and out of the side or pushed out wide. You know, Ollie Watkins is now playing a little bit wider on in terms of their setup, isn't he? So I agree. Yeah, good point.
Finally, then, Ty, what is the minimum expectation then you have for him right now? Where do you want to be finishing in the table? I guess that kind of you feel is a decent start or decent first half of his campaign.
I mean, well, it's tough because we haven't had a great start to the season. You know, there's been games where we probably should have took something from. We probably should have took something from Fulham. I'm not saying we deserve something from that game, because we definitely shouldn't. There's a game where, you know, there's definitely a point. Losing the opening game of the season against Bournemouth, you know, we should have beat Man City at Villa Park. That was
should have beat Chelsea.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we couldn't hit a barn door against Chelsea. So, and progression this season, I think this season, I don't want to say it's a write-off, you know, because we have to play everybody twice. But if we can get in that top half of the table and then going into the summer transfer window, there's a lot of appeal there to players who want to move on to a different club. Like, look, we're pushing up the table. This is the vision. This is where we're at. We really want to get into Europe, and we want these players, attractive players, to be coming in and just have that vision. You know, if we finish in 15, 16, it's hard to sell that to a player to say, yeah, we want to push for Europe. You know, let's see it on paper. Let's see us climb up the table. And then end of the season, that's where we can bring in some those calibre of players to take us to that next level. We've done it with the manager. Find your best 11, see where we need to improve, and then get them players in to start pushing for those places. You know, the top 8 is sailing away a bit from everybody else. You know, Newcastle are starting to get into that mix as well. And, you know, these huge clubs are spending these huge amounts of money. So we don't want to let them sail away from us. You know, we need to be keeping up with them.
You must be quite buoyed by the fact that obviously Aston Villa were good defensively. Like, their problem is very well defined, isn't it? It's very clear, and that is scoring goals. That is midfielders sort of stitching midfield to attack. And like I said, with Emery coming in, hopefully he remedies that just by creating a more clearly defined tactical system for the front six, let's say. So, I mean, is that something that comes into your thinking? Like, is it just a matter of putting Ings back into the side, or what were Villa fans screaming for in the last days of Gerrard?
I mean, if you want collectively what we've been screaming for the majority of the season is 2 halves of football where the same team come out in each half, and that's something we didn't know what Villa were going to turn up. You know, we'd have a good 45 or absolute dire 45, and sometimes it was 2 halves of dire football. You know, Man City, we had 2 good halves of football. You just never know what was going to come out. So just a consistent team with a consistent plan to score some goals and go head to head with everybody in the league in a game. You know, and I think that's what we need more so than anything, is consistency in our form and consistency in the style of football we're playing.
Interesting. I mean, for me, it feels like Danjuma to Villa seems nailed on at the moment. Ty, thank you so much. You've been absolutely class. If people at home want to see your socials, what are they?
Just at Ty Bracey.
Perfect. We'll also put them in the description below. And if you guys at home want to get involved in the talking point, then get in the description and follow us on social media, because that's where the tweet goes out. Get in the comments to talk about Unai Emery and Aston Villa. And as always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to Football Daily.
Up the Villa.